What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Paradox Kingdom. So today, this is going to be the first time, but I'm going to have a conversation with a person who is not a Christian. So I've jumped on Fanatics or Brady's podcast, and so now I'm having someone to join me on mine and kind of just have those conversations. I think they're very important. I've had many conversations with Michael Apple through Facebook and one Zoom meeting, but we had some really good conversations, and he's really good on thinking through some things, and he's really smart and brilliant. So I love him to introduce himself, and we'll just take it from there.
Hello, my name's Mike Apple, and as his intro indicates, we pretty much met on Facebook. We've had a couple of long form conversations on Facebook, and in chat, and we've also had one communication over Zoom previously. So we figured we're going to try to record it this time and see if we like the result.
Yeah, very cool. So if you can introduce kind of what are your current beliefs about God and kind of how did you grow up, or however you want to do that, but how did you grow
S-
up, and then what are you at now?
Simplifying things, basically, I grew up culturally Jewish and functionally atheist until I embraced a form of Judaism, maybe around the age of 10. And I would say I kind of went through a fairly inquisitive phase as far as religion went. I explored a lot of kind of alternative concepts, and religion just kind of snuck in at that time. I was starting to experience doubts by the time I was around 14 and I'm still Jewish, still a practicing Jew, but I had a lot of questions about the God as was presented in the Hebrew Bible by the time I was in my mid-teens. By the time I was in college, I was still culturally Jewish, but I had a never-ending supply of questions over the specifics of what one would read in the Hebrew Bible. I didn't really encounter the Christian Gospels until college,
Wow.
mostly at the attention of Christian friends of mine who found me very insufferable in religious talking and debates and wanted me to actually read the Gospels that I was pretending to either ignore or critique. So that was really my first deep encounter with Christianity. I mean, obviously, the United States is being the country that it is. I've run into a lot of Christians and discussed topics with them beforehand, but I didn't really get in deep into it until my first year in college. I'd be fairly described for most of my adult life as kind of a Spinozan deist, which is to say, it's hard. My big problem is the notion of an activist God. It's hard for me to square the existence of the world as we understand it with the God, the literary figure that we see in the Old Testament. As I've grown older, I've become more agnostic. So I'm probably best described now as an agnostic apatheist. Basically, I don't know. I don't really know that anybody can know, and maybe find the concept a little bit incoherent to begin with. And also, I don't care as much. That's where the apathy part comes in. And that's to a certain extent that is defined by the fact that so if you want to come at me and say that there is some sort of creator God that's required to exist, I may agree with you or I may not. I don't see that the question can be settled, at least to my specifications. So that's a windy way of saying basically I'm an agnostic.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think for the most part, I think that's more honest than some atheists, because I think if we don't know, if God doesn't exist or we don't know, yeah, I mean, and that's just my idea. Like, if I were not a Christian, I would probably be definitely agnostic. I don't think I would go to the all the way just saying atheist. But that's just me. I know that, um, and you have your reasons. We'll kind of get into those.
Sure.
But so when it came to you going to reading the Bible, reading the new, at least the New Testament, reading the New Testament,
Yeah.
did you see that they were coherent? Or did you say, like, just like we think for Muslims and for Mormons, right? Like, these dudes
It's
just ripped off our stuff and they just completely don't even know what we're talking about.
It
You
was
know what I mean?
interesting because
Is that
I'm sorry to interrupt. It was interesting because I discussed the Gospels a lot with, I had friends who were very, very serious Christian believers when I was a teenager. And I more or less grew up surrounded by non-Jews. I mean, I'd encounter my Jews
yeah.
once a week, when I go to the temple, and pretty much I didn't encounter them at any other time because I'm not living in a particularly Jewish town. I don't have like I'm not surrounded by Jewish culture. As far as it goes, almost all of my friends were Gentiles, and some of them came from pretty strong believing traditions, both Catholic and Protestant. So I would get in these discussions with them, but I didn't really know the material that I was debating against. Instead, I would just sort of fall back on, yeah, well, as a Jew and somebody who reads the Bible, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. So, I wouldn't be able to give them an informed opinion. And my general understanding of the Gospels were they're essentially Jewish writings that just weren't canon in the Hebrew Bible. That's kind of how I viewed them. And
Hmm.
then I read them in college, and they became more. They became different than that. I was reading the Gospels at about the same time that I started reading the classics from the ancient world, and the more I read in the classics, the more the Gospels sort of made sense as far as their context. I mean, you could see the Jewishness part, but you could also see the Hellenistic environment populating them. What I was surprised was how I was fairly sympathetic to the Jesus character. I considered
What?
this.
Yeah. What do you mean? What do
Well,
you
I
mean by
really
that?
like the
Or
Gospel of Mark.
hmm.
Right? Everybody picks their favorite gospel, I assume.
Yeah.
When I read through it, I liked the Gospel of Mark. I thought the Gospel of Matthew was unsufferable. Um, but better than Luke. And I thought John literally made me angry. I wanted to, if I could have reached through the book and grabbed a hold of the author and strangled him, because um, it's not just that. It's like I didn't like John because I didn't. There was no, from a literary standpoint, Jesus has doesn't. There's no stakes, right? He's already the sort of incarnation of God at this point. So how do you write that? How do you make it seem like any of the things that he's going to encounter matter? Whereas in
Hmm. That's
Mark,
a good point.
Mark, I think, does a good job of emphasizing the human nature of the character, of how this character is, how he's feeling. It's a mystery. He can't say everything that he wants to. His power sometimes fails. He seems more human. So when you finally get to the money shot when he's on the crucifix, his quoting of the second Psalms is or 22nd Psalm is really powerful, right?
Hmm.
You believe that he's there, he's praying to God saying, "Why have you forsaken me?" And that I thought that was very, very powerful. At the time, I didn't realize that the Mark 16 had all the extra stuff that was in Mark 16. Looks like it was added substantially later. And I didn't really
Yeah.
like the stuff at the end of 16, but I thought up to about that point, it had been pretty impressive. And I liked it. Literarily speaking, I liked it. Whereas in John, I didn't care about the character. The character suffered nothing. He was God. He came. He
It was
pretended
just
to
like
be man
this,
for a short period of time, and then he left. And I didn't have any
like
way of relating
Superman,
to
right?
that character or caring.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know that's not the way Christians look at the story, but that was how I kind of reacted to the story. After reading the Gospels, I had a chance to read the letters of Paul, and I immediately hated Paul, like at every level. And I've tried to get into reading, and I read everything subsequent, but I didn't read everything when I was in college. It's kind of like, or I'm up to the point where I
Exactly.
don't
Yeah.
like, so I'm going to leave it alone. Later on in life, I came and tried to read all the letters and read everything and of course, I loved Revelation. I'd read Revelation earlier. Revelation is just totally crazy and metal, and it's fun. It's a fun read, and if you understand the context of it, it's it's cool, right? You can definitely see how it's a parody or works off of the of Daniel and works kind of like a parody of Daniel. And I'd already read a lot about Daniel because it's
Hebrew.
obviously
Right.
canonical in Hebrew Bible. So my reaction was, "This is cool. I thought it was cooler than I thought it would be, but it didn't convince me that it was true. If that
Yeah.
helps." And then go,
Yeah.
oh, this is how the universe turns upon this particular set of stories. I felt sorry for Jesus, especially the one
Hmm.
in Mark. Kind of,
Yeah.
but it was a powerful story, very powerful story.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. That's very interesting because I don't think I've met many people where I've got to hear their perspective on it, right? Like to understand what are they thinking through? Because like I read, the Quran, or I read
Yeah,
parts of the Book of Mormon. I read more of the Quran, and I'm reading through it, and so it's a different perspective because I'm an
yeah,
outsider, and then I'm critiquing it, right, as I'm reading it.
absolutely.
Um,
Yes,
but just to hear yours, because I would understand, like, yeah, like these are my people. Why are you taking my stuff and you're pretending it's yours? But I mean, they, like you said, most of them were Jewish writers,
sure,
um,
sure.
even if they were in Hellenistic times. Yeah, so that's just that's a cool perspective. That's a different perspective that I haven't heard. Um, and so yeah, so real quick, why did you think Matthew was insufferable?
I could see
I
he's
mean,
a
it's a while back.
after a while you see a lot of quote mining, especially having to do with
Oh,
prophecy. And at that
yeah.
time, I still knew a little bit of Hebrew. And was interesting is my expectation. I knew nothing about Markan priority. The hypothesis that Mark was the first of them. Because this
Oh,
is the
yeah,
first
yeah.
time I've read the Gospels, and I'm an 18-year-old wandering through the text in English. So what the hell do I know? I I'm reading Matthew and I'm noticing that I read Matthew first because that's the order that you get it. And then I get the sort of what seems like the same story in Mark, but the story is just pared down, like it's written. It's like Hemingway writes Mark. It's just pared down, it gets the story, but it gets the story very pared down. And for me, it started at the kind of the weirdness of the birth narrative, which just threw me out of the text. In the case of Mark, there's no birth narrative. You just jump right into it.
You just
And
jump right in.
he's
Yeah.
right. He's an adult. He even meets his family. What's this, Mark 3? And then his family's like, what the hell's wrong with this guy? Right? Meets him again, like
He's
in
crazy.
6. Is this Jesus, son of Mary? I mean, it seems more real. Also, I found a lot of the in accordance with prophecy stuff to be kind of tedious because from a Jewish point of view, literally none of that works. And it doesn't work because the Messiah has a bunch of characteristics that Jewish tradition associates with the Messiah. And Jesus just doesn't do those. So you run into them and go, he's just grabbing some prophecy and trying to make an excuse for why it didn't actually work for him. And also Matthew 27 really pissed me off. And that's the one where basically the crowd supposedly in front of Pilate says, his blood be on our heads. And it's like, yeah, I know where that leads. So you're reading it.
Hmm.
I'm reading it from a point of view that's obviously has not Christian. It has to do with some
Yeah.
of the bad history between Christianity and Judaism, and that passage sort of set me off. But
Hmm.
um, I liked it
You're
better. I
thinking like
mean,
the
I
Martin
like
Luther's who came and accused the Jews type of, like, or
well. Well, the basic notion is the Jews in Mark 27:55, I think. I don't know why I haven't memorized the New Testament, but they're basically saying, "Yeah, I know we're gonna kill this guy instead of Barabbas. So his iniquity be on our heads. So if you have any problems, just blame the Jews. They're the ones who killed your Lord." And this is how the excuse develops over time. It's like Jews killed Jesus, so we've got a pretty good reason to keep the enmity going. And it just has that passage and the way it's used by later Christians has a terrible history. So, kind of hard.
yeah,
And of course, when you're when
yeah,
you're
no, and
18,
I agree.
when you're 18, you want to pick a fight with the world, right? It's like, oh yeah, you're gonna go out to protest and stuff like that. So yeah, that set me off.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, no, that makes sense. So since we have a short time, we
yeah,
can kind of go back and forth, kind of with your questions and mine, just so we can keep moving along. I
sure.
was just, yeah, very interested. These are some things we haven't discussed yet in our previous conversations.
Right.
You want to go first?
Um, it's if you I mean the questions that I was going to ask you had to do with certain ways that you interpret scripture. And since we are just talking about Revelation, um, one of the things that you would notice, or you may notice as you read the New Testament and you read portions of the Old Testament, is the prophetic tradition. And more than anything else, the prophetic tradition attracted me to the Hebrew Bible. because prophecy is just totally cool when you're a kid. You go, oh my God, look at this. It's like a secret code for how the world's going to end. And you're 12, so you have like no emotional investment at all in what that might mean, right? The world's going to end. Well, it's not to me. This is cool. This is the end of times is exciting. Let's do that. Um,
Yeah.
the problem is, as you get older, you look at the context of what these prophecies mean, and several things reach out. I mean, and one of the things that reaches out, and what this is, I actually got from my rabbi, because after my bar mitzvah, I had a chance to actually speak with my rabbi personally, and I was still very interested in biblical prophecy. And he totally changed my point of view on how biblical prophecy works. And he did it by saying, look, he pointed to me to all these passages. He said, these are hopes for a future that haven't happened. He changed my perspective from the point of view of, okay, we have to expect that these are things that will actually happen, to these are hopes of renewal that haven't occurred.
Mm.
And then he started to turn me on to the aspects of Jewish history. And as I proceeded over the years, I would read it and I would notice that there's an awful lot going on there, far more than just sitting around waiting for the Messiah to come. Like, for example, I would criticize Jesus for not being the Jewish Messiah, which he wasn't. But at the same time, I can criticize Jewish sources for waiting for a Messiah that I came to believe never would come. So it
Mm.
was part of getting me into it, and it was part of getting me out of it. Not out of Judaism, still Jew, but out of the notion that this is telling me something about my future, as opposed to explaining how people felt about their past or their future, earlier people. And increasing, I mean, it is hard not to sympathize with people who are absolutely at the worst end of events, and that they want salvation,
They want hope. Yeah.
resurrection, and that even the concept of resurrection starts as something that's about nations resurrecting, not about individuals. And then you could see the concept changes.
That's true.
National resurrection becomes personal resurrection, because then it's the whole world that's going to be judged. And finally, you're going to get the world that we were promised. You're going to get the Olam Haba, the world to come. It's a great story. But it did help sort of push me out of anything like a literal interpretation of the Bible. So my
Hmm.
question to you is, what does
Yeah.
it mean to you? Not me. Sorry, I went on too
Yeah,
much.
yeah. No, you're good. As far as prophecies,
Mhm. Especially
yeah.
things like Revelation. You don't have to worry about the Old Testament. Just,
New
how
Revelation.
you, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, so I think just similar like you were saying to Daniel, they're apocalyptic literature. So he's using imagery to explain what he's seeing, right? He's having a vision. John is having a vision. Because I've had conversations like this with Christians, and some have said, well, all this stuff already passed, we're just waiting for kind of the end to happen, but all this stuff already been fulfilled
sure,
in its time. And then I had other Christians say, just random things. And so there is part that was fulfilled, right? When Nero was going around and murdering Christians and blaming them and things
sure,
like that. So there was aspects of it that were happening in the time, but then also
sure,
future. So one thing about the book of Revelation is it's not in order. So the book, we can't read it literal, but we also can't read it in order because there's certain things that happen in this year, and then the next year the sun's still there. And it's like, wait, the sun got
yeah,
destroyed in chapter, 3 or 4. Now in
oh
6,
yeah,
it's still there. So, so the book is not in order, but it's also not
of
literal
course,
because I've had people say Jesus was black because his feet are bronze, right? And his hair is wool. But they think it's the texture of wool when it says it's the color of wool. You know what I mean? So,
right,
um, I've
right,
had those conversations. As far as prophecies, I think I believe that they're gonna happen. I believe maybe
okay,
some parts of it have happened, but I do believe that there are prophecies that we're waiting for. As far
okay.
as like if
So
you're talking about like
you're like
let me
future.
say this real quick. Yeah,
Yeah,
let me
good.
say this real quick. As far as if you're talking about like predestination, not predestination, tribulation, pre-trib, mid-trib, and all that, we can
Yep,
talk about that because there's so many different ideas on that as well. But you
absolutely.
can jump in. Yeah.
No, I was so basically futurism or some aspect of futurism is your interpretation. Like
I,
maybe ports, as you
I would
said,
say so. Yeah.
like the preterist interpretation is that all was settled by the destruction of the temple in 70. But you can take various portions of that and just assume that their futurism is the idea that at least a big portion of the story, maybe the dramatic finale, so to speak, happens sometime in the future. So okay, cool.
Yeah, I would say that. I would say just like at least the way that we understand biblical prophecy in the Hebrew Bible is that there's something that happened, but then there was a foreshadow. There's something that happened, and then it
Okay.
happened again in a fulfillment of the prophecy, like the fullness of it. So I would say there's certain aspects like that in Revelation as well.
Okay.
Um, yeah. What was your question on, or the reason you had? Because I know you had asked that, but I was wondering if there's something deeper to asking about the prophecies or Revelation, the end of the world. Because it's funny because a lot of Christians are waiting for Jesus to come back,
Right.
and again, we don't have an exact, we don't know the day or time. But one of the things
Sure.
that happens is that the gospel has to be preached throughout the world. Paul said the gospel went throughout the whole world, but not literally. Um, but if that's the case, and this is more of a pick towards Christians. If we're waiting for Jesus to come back, he's not going to come back before the gospel goes throughout the whole world. And he's waiting on us. We shouldn't be waiting on him, right? Like you said, right? We are waiting for the Messiah. Like, no, like go and do something. Like go and spread the word. If you're waiting for him, then do something while you're waiting. Don't just sit on your butts and just, consume because most Christians are consumers. But again, that's more towards them. And I don't know if
Well,
that covers
well,
what
it's
we're talking about.
interesting. The Jewish concept of evolved concept of the Messiah also includes the Messianic age as being a fit target for human beings to arrange for. So, in a sense, and this would be true since the Middle Ages, the thinkers like Maimonides or Nachmanides would have made the comment that human beings are responsible for deserving the setting of the Messianic age. And then, in other words, that we have to be proper. And also, we need to stop, jumping at every possible Messianic claim because Jews have jumped
Yeah.
at plenty of false Messianic claims. And I'm not going to bore you with the litany of it, but I could. So it's like, all right. So in a way, that kind of does comport to the idea that we have to play a part in the millennium and be ready
Yeah.
for the sort of final justice. So are you rapture or are you not rapture, for
Yeah.
example?
So I think if anything, it's mid-trib or post-trib. I don't believe in pre-trib. I was
Okay.
growing up, the Left Behind series, I thought it was pre-trib, right? I was like, yes, the world's gonna suck and we're gonna be gone.
uh,
And then I see how the rest of the world is being treated that are Christians, and they've been suffering since the beginning of
uh-huh.
Christianity, right? And it's
Sure.
like,
Revelations 5 and 6. Right. Get your white
yeah,
cloak.
yeah,
Sure.
and it's a very ethnocentric or an egocentric way of viewing it, where
Definitely
the whole
egocentric. Yeah.
world revolves around the USA, right? Like
Sure.
he's not gonna let us suffer because he's a good God, and all the good stuff that we misinterpret in the Bible.
I have an aside, which you'll find hilarious. When I was a stockbroker, I made money off Left Behind, the Left Behind series.
Interesting.
I had a on a corporate shell in an old gold mine the stock was purchased by Left Behind Games. So all
Hmm.
of a sudden it's the early 2000s. I'm wondering why this particular stock has any activity at all because it's just a clean corporate shell and the stock shouldn't be worth anything. And all of a sudden I'm going, how the hell did this become worth $5 a share when I mean, so I was like, what is this? And yeah, Left
What is
Behind
it?
Games. Somebody tried to make the whole Left Behind series into a computer game. And
Oh
I,
yeah,
Jewish stockbroker, profited off of it. So that's a
that's funny. Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. There was something. Oh,
little weird.
I was watching a video, which kind of goes into what you were talking about a little bit earlier, from Dr. Mike Brown. Maybe you've seen some of his stuff. He used to be
I have.
he's born Jew. He's now Christian. I think he calls himself a fulfilled Jew or something like that. But basically, he believes in Jesus.
Okay.
But he was saying in the video that Jesus or the Messiah had to come before the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. And I just was curious on your thoughts on that, right? Like there's certain things that had to be fulfilled, and it's rabbinic Judaism now, right? It's not the way it used to be because there's no actual temple. So there's certain sacrifices
Got it.
or laws that, but yeah, curious on your thoughts on that.
Two things. Item one, Judaism has continued to change consistently throughout its entire existence. The Judaism that is proffered, that is described in the Hebrew Bible, is itself almost certainly contingent. It is an evolved from a previous Judaism doing Jews have changed what they do many, many times in the history of existing as a group or as a people. So calling it rabbinical Judaism right now, sure, fine. That makes you feel good, but it's like not the first change, won't be the last. Actually, the change from rabbinic Judaism to more secular Judaism happens in Europe in the 19th and early 20th centuries. It's a moving target. So, I mean, that's the first point, which is that it's kind of hard to go, okay, this is the stuff God wanted you to do, and then this is the stuff that you've interpreted to do later. And there's no easy place to stop at any point and say this versus that. It's convenient to imagine if you believe that the Torah is a literal representation of what God's law is, but we know too much about the actual composition of the Torah to take that completely seriously. So everything is kind of contingent. It's a great big evolving literary and cultural corpus. Christianity, I won't say it's the same, but it's similar in that it grows
Similar.
out of this literary tradition that has evolved in many directions, trying to keep, and tries to keep coherent through historical or literary processes. It's just like it's this what happens when you write things down and you stay around for a while. You have a 2,000-year-old religious culture. I have a 3,000-year-old religious culture. There will be a lot of changes in it. So that's the first part. The second part is Brown is referring directly to Daniel 9, 25 through 27, where he is doing a count. He's trying to count to when the
Yeah.
Mashiach is cut away. And the use of the word Messiah in that context is somebody who's been anointed. So it could be a high
Yeah.
priest, it could be a king, it could be somebody who's been anointed by oil. Um, so you have to count what is the time frame that's found in Daniel between whenever you're supposed to, whenever the
7 or 9
judgment is
weeks, something like
decreed.
that. Yeah.
He makes a deliberate call. He tries to date it to a particular Persian king in the middle of the 5th century. Jews, for example, have historically tended to put it at basically the very first time Babylon conquers Judea, which put it like 605 BCE. The problem fundamentally is the calendar never works. Doesn't matter what you do. Whoever wrote Daniel did not really have a very good idea of how long in the past things were. So it doesn't really work. I mean, I get it to make it work. And Orthodox Jews sometimes do this too. They go, the destruction of the Second Temple is the key, but
Hmm.
they don't consider Jesus to have been the person who was supposed to have been cut off. Usually, Jews will think that it's Onias III before the start of the Maccabean revolt. That's
Hmm.
what most Jews, certainly most secular scholars, will probably point to. I am sure Brown has counter arguments to all of this, but I don't know exactly
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
are. But I know that I'm pretty sure that's where he's getting that argument from.
Yeah. And it was a short, so he didn't go in much in depth. But like you
Sure,
said, yeah, I know there's way more to go into it. I was just curious
of
what you
course,
thought.
of course. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I'm not saying
yeah.
I'm debunking Dr. Brown because I've got
Yeah.
5 minutes to do so. Yeah, it seems a little hasty.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. All right. So I'll jump around just because this was recent.
Yeah,
And it's more so of sharing a story than it is a question. I don't know how to turn it into a question, but well, Brady on his podcast recently, he talked about the $10,000 question type of thing and getting into it. Um, and so it's funny because so I'm praying that God would tell me what he told him. Uh, but then also, other things like he was talking about, like the pride in there, like, oh
sure.
yeah, God gave me, whatever. But I did want to share the story. I wanted to share it with him, but I didn't want to do it through text. But
Got it.
We were when I first moved to Massachusetts. I was at Gordon Conwell. During Halloween, there's a church there in Salem that does what is it? Dream interpretation and palm and psalm readings, not palm readings, but psalm readings, right? Like they do
Mhm.
their own little spin. And so me and my wife, we were there and we were volunteering to help. And so my wife was over there praying for people and stuff, and I was at the door, and I was like, "This is what I'm gonna do the whole night. Like, come on." So finally, me and the other lady that were like kind of the greeters, kind of checking people in, seeing what they need prayer for. We get the last person. And I'm like, okay, cool. So then we go, we sit down, and as soon as we sit down, it's this big trucker dude, got a big beard. He looks similar to you a little bit, but a little bit bigger. And
Okay.
he sits down with his arms crossed, and he's like, I don't believe in none of this. And so I'm like, well, then why are you here, right? Like, there you go, perfect, just like that. And he's like, I don't believe in none of this. I think all this is fake. And
Mhm.
then we're like, okay. And in my mind, I'm like, well, then why are you here? And the girl's like, oh, that's okay. What can we do for you? And he's like, I want you to tell me something that only God can reveal to me to show me that He's real, and that's it. And I was like, well, I need a little more information. I didn't say anything because I was just volunteering. She's like, okay, cool, we're gonna go ahead and pray. And so we close our eyes, and I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen. So as soon as we close our eyes and she's praying, I feel someone like squeezing my chest, like if you were to give me a bear hug, like you're trying to hurt me, like just
Sure.
squeeze. And I like, oh man, I had to like take a grasp. And then she's like, I feel like a tight pressure in my chest. And then I was like, yeah, I was like, I feel literally, it felt like someone, like I had to open my eyes because I thought someone was squeezing my chest. And he's like, there's no way you would have known. He's like, 3 years ago, he's a truck driver. 3 years ago, his truck flipped and his seatbelt killed him. And he was dead for 3 minutes. His seatbelt was around his chest. It
Okay.
squeezed him until he died. The police got there, they revived him or whatever. And he's like, there's no way y'all would have known that. I was like, he's like, y'all don't know me. I was like, I have never seen you in my life. I have no idea who you are. And so it was just that one of those experiences that I was like, okay, God, you did it before with this random guy, and I know Brady a little bit. So that's what makes it harder because I don't want to kind of assume and kind of make up a message for him. You know what I mean? Because it's like we kind of know each other, what I feel like maybe God would have said. But anyways, it was just something I wanted to share because I wanted
Sure.
to share it with him, and maybe I will, and maybe I'll
So
just share it.
I sort of blundered in that by trying to give him actual mathematical examples of what the
I like
what the
that.
odds would be.
Yeah,
I remember because
I
he
saw that.
deliberately dared me in that
He
video. At
did.
some point said, "Well,
Yeah.
Apple, he could probably correct me on this." It's like, okay.
Yeah. I saw that and I was like, well, he's gonna give you because he's like it's incalculable, I think. And I was like, you just said his name. He's gonna give you an answer now. So yeah,
Probably, yeah, probably a habit.
that's so
But
funny.
no, that is funny. Well, okay. I mean, Daniel, obviously Daniel had prophetic prayers. Joseph had prophetic prayers.
That's true.
So yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
So again, it was kind of random. And maybe I'll share with him or I'll just send him the video, tell him where to start. But so I'll let you jump in with your next question just because I kind of took some time with that.
Oh no, no. Actually, the question I would have for you is, since you're what would you expect from the end? Right? I know because I mean, I was going to make a couple of jokes about, TikTok prophesying the rapture, but
Oh
obviously
yeah, I
there's
wanted to know what were those questions because I was curious what you were talking about on that.
I wish the
The TikTok jokes or whatever they're
oh
doing.
there was a I think it's a preacher somewhere in Africa. I can't remember the details, but he comes on to TikTok and he says, "Okay, the general time when the if you're of a certain type, you're going to assume that your rapture event's going to happen in September, typically because it's right around the time of Yom Kippur, right? It's the Feast of the Tabernacles or
Yeah,
something in this area before the shofar blows.
the shofar. Yep.
You're standing tall before the man. Okay, great. Um, this year is going to be the year it's going to happen. And there's all these TikTok videos and some YouTube videos that came out where these people, obviously in a great amount of expectation, think that they're just going to leave clothing behind and go on their way. And of course, it doesn't happen. And then they
Yeah.
redate it. No, no, we got the date wrong. It's over doesn't happen.
It
Right.
was a
And
spiritual thing that
inevitably, it's
happened.
like it just Harold camping its way all the way to a miserable conclusion. And of course, the internet makes total fun of them. And I mean, one, it tells you that maybe you shouldn't be very specific about your end of days. I mean, just if you're gonna
Especially
be in
if
the
Jesus
fake
said,
prophet business, don't give them a hard date.
yeah,
And in Brady's channel, we've had a number of discussions with people who've come back and they have told me X, and it's going to be tribulations. And at least for some of their prophecies, we should be right in the middle of tribulations right now. And I always ask them for details. I want to know when they think, because standard Christian response is, no, we can't know. Right?
yeah,
They'll say, well, it's going to happen, but we don't know when it's going to happen. And then we can discuss what sort of thing they feel comfortable looking for to see that it's going to happen. But if you're going to give me details, then I'm going to have to dig. You got to tell me when these things are going to happen, especially when they
yeah,
involve things like comets or space objects, things that I can look into in some detail. So I mean, we've got a number of asteroids which are supposed to be the harbinger, Abaddon, or not Abaddon, but Apollon, or whatever they figure it's going to be, or some sort of event, or the big peace treaty that Israel is supposed to sign with all of its neighbors, and that's going to be the sign of the final accumulation of the forces at the Battle of Armageddon. It's like, okay, all right, give me the
yeah,
details. I got to know.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean I can share some thoughts.
Sure,
So
sure,
Revelation, opposite of you, was one of the books that I stayed away from for a long time because it was so mystical. And I was like, I don't
sure,
understand it. I like Paul because it was practical. When I was a new believer, I was like,
yeah,
I need to know how not to do this, right? Like,
sure,
I stopped smoking, drinking, pornography, all that stuff, like cold turkey. Like it was just,
yeah,
it was gone. The desire was gone. But like anger and other things like that took a little bit more time. It took more concentration and dedication. And there's still things I work on. So I like Paul because he's like, just do this.
sure,
Don't do that. Do this. Okay, cool. That's what I need. I need a manual. And so probably in the summer I started reading the book of Revelation like a little bit more in depth, a little bit like
mhm,
understanding like okay, let me just get into it and see. So I do enjoy it now, but so I'll tell you kind of what I think and what I've heard, but these are not going to be like concrete things just because the more I hear, the more I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I never thought about that aspect of it. So from what I've heard, and these are from professors or different people like that actually
sure,
studied this. Again, this is a book that's I need to get more in depth into. But you're right, reading it with Daniel is really helpful. So
yeah.
so there's gonna be some kind of truce. There's gonna be some kind of thing where the world kind of unites. There's also some that say everyone unites against Israel, and
The
and
modern
when that
one,
happens,
the modern state of
yeah,
Israel.
yes, yeah,
Okay,
modern state of
okay,
Israel,
okay.
because I don't think there would be another way, right, to identify Israel because, but I would say modern state of Israel. So there's gonna do that. There's gonna be one world currency where you can't buy, you can't sell unless you have the market of beast. So people are thinking it's the chip here, chip in your hand type of thing. Um,
Okay.
and so because I work in finance, well, I mean I work at a bank, so there's a lot of talks about that as well. Not from inside, but other people asking me, right? Like, are we going to that? We know about cryptocurrency. There's it just muddies the
Sure.
water because there's so many speculations and thoughts and ideas on this. But even that, I someone was asking me today about the idea that we're getting rid of the penny, right? Like we're not printing the penny anymore. And again, most of this is
Believe
based
it
on
when
the
I see,
U.S., right? Yeah,
believe it when I
and
see it.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. And so, so they're like, okay, so one world currency, you can't buy, you can't sell, you can't do anything unless you have that. There's going to be some kind of uniting where people come together, maybe one world leader type of thing. And so a lot of people were thinking because of what happened with COVID, right? COVID was a global thing. It happened everywhere where everything shut down, where nobody was able to do anything. There was curfews imposed and all that. So if we think like, okay, there's no more internet, there's no more currency, there's no more whatever, that can be catastrophic to the point where like, okay, we need someone to rise up and unite us, whether it's war or robbery or theft or all this stuff. So something's gonna happen. At least, again, these are theories. I'm kind of mushing
Okay.
them together. Um, Something's gonna happen. So someone unites and says, "Hey, I'm gonna be the leader. We're gonna have one world currency, and everything's gonna be utopia. Everything's gonna be nice. Everyone's gonna be happy." Um, and that's gonna be the I forget. It's not the because there's a prophet, right? There's the two prophets that come and do all these
Yes.
miracles and things like that. But
The
then
two,
there's the
yeah,
Antichrist. There you go.
the two watchers.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah. So
the
the
both
the
prophets who have the ability to shut up the
yeah,
heavens and keep the rain from falling.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, they're
So
like the
then
two
yeah,
witnesses are kind of comparable to the two beasts, but
yeah,
the two witnesses are
yeah. So
on the heavenly side of the ledger.
yeah, I was thinking the Antichrist. So the one person who's gonna
Oh,
be, yeah, he's gonna
beast
be
of
the
the sea,
Antichrist.
beast of the earth, right?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of the idea. As far as like stuff, I think it's gonna be the way it is in other countries for Christians is probably how it's gonna be here, with it's in Iran or China. Where if you're a Christian, it's gonna be either governed or it's gonna be very difficult to be a Christian. There can be persecution, right? Because we're the bigots, we're the people that, you know, say love, but then we don't love, all that stuff. So we're going to be targeted. At least that's where the persecution is going to come.
Okay,
Things are going to get really bad. Tribulation, we're going to suffer. We're going to die. We're going to, overcome by the blood of the Lamb, the word of testimony. You're, there's going to be a bunch of killings. That, again, this is kind of what I
okay.
was told, and I'm trying to piece all these things together. There's going to be wars, rumors of wars. So I think the rumors of wars, all that's going to happen before it gets good with the Antichrist. Again, I don't know because the people who were telling me this were telling me because they were going in order, and I'm like, now I learned later the book is not in order, so you can't tell me
No.
this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and they didn't know that.
It's
Uh,
thematically in order, but they're not. They're things that are just going to be. These signs are more likely to be a description of concurrent things, right? It's like
True.
they're not like. Then you have the bowls, and then you have the
Yeah.
scrolls, and then you have the bowls, and then you have the trumpets, and
That's
then
true.
then you have the guys on
Yeah,
the kazoos. I mean,
exactly.
yeah, no, it's much
Yeah.
more coherent if you sort of if you don't get locked into a specific chronology and just let the overall schema happen. What
Yeah.
the point here? The point is obviously God is going to let Satan have his final grand hurrah, and then he's going to get his butt kicked at Armageddon, and
Yeah.
then 1,000 years after that he's going to get a chance to go do it again. So there's a guy who's
Yeah,
certainly in need of a life
that's the
coach.
biggest part that upsets me. I don't know why the heck that's even in there. You know what I mean? Like, to be honest, like, I know there's questions that atheists ask and
I can
others
tell you
ask
what I
about.
think, but it's not what you probably want to hear.
Yeah, let me know. I'm curious.
Um, I think the composition of Revelation happened over a fairly long period of time, and probably not just one author. I think you see details that indicate a composition history in the late 60s and the early 70s. And I think you see composition details that point you more to the 90s, which is one of the reasons why it's very difficult to track exactly what's going on. I mean, Nero gets positively identified by using his numbers in two different ways, but Nero is dead by 68. So it's got to be Nero comes back with the illusion that he comes one of the king as if returns as if by a mortal wound. We know that there's a fair number of Nero imposters, all the things to be. So you kind of, and also to a certain extent, you can look at Nero and go, Nero is just like Caligula. And I mean, so you can see that the target already moves around. Who's the ultimate bad guy? Who's the final boss in this particular story? So I think there was an idea that Domitian, Domitian, that would be the brother of Titus, who is the one who is the guy who destroys the temple. He's the son of Vespasian. In 69, you've got the year of four Caesars. Vespasian ends up winning,
Oh
but
yeah,
in
yeah.
order for him to become the emperor, he's got to leave Judea, leaves it to Titus. Titus destroys the temple. Vespasian becomes emperor. Um, Titus Vespasian runs for a while, builds a Colosseum, does other stuff. Titus His son becomes the emperor after him, but dies during an epidemic. And then Domitian is his younger brother, and Domitian starts well, but he becomes kind of crazy later on. So people start comparing him to both like Nero and Caligula, who are popular examples of crazy Caesars. So there's some sense that
Yeah.
maybe Domitian is also possibly this figure. Um, I think stuff like the Thousand Years was added to this to sort of give an indication that they're not sure who it's going to be. Right. It's like
Mm.
you're waiting around for this to happen right now, and it's not going to happen right now. We don't, I mean, I think that
Well, that's a
probably
good
that part
point.
of Revelation gets written in the 90s, and I think it's before people like the author of Second Peter, right? And they're saying, look, it's a God year. What's a year is a thousand, a day is a
It's
thousand
a
years to
thousand years.
God. So
Yeah.
stop sitting there. I was going to say watching the clock. Didn't really have any clocks, but you get the idea. Stop
Yeah.
fixating on these particular events. It's going to be on a schedule. Live your life. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, no, that's good. At least, even especially the part where you're talking about why they added 1,000 years, not just that it was added at a later time, but the idea because Paul makes it seem like Jesus is coming back in our lifetime right now, right
Absolutely.
here, and yeah, and so they may have been like, okay, we just do what we're
Yeah.
doing, but
You know, don't
he's like, no,
fixate on
it's
this.
gonna be further.
Yeah. There's a
Yeah,
lot of stuff that still is left to happen. And I
yeah,
mean, it totally
that's
makes
true.
sense. You have to kind of take the temperature down just a little bit. And because, you don't know when it's going to happen. There's people, 1900 years ago who thought this was absolutely going to happen any single day. And we still have people who kind of act like that 19 centuries
19,
later.
what is it? Yeah, 99 reasons why Jesus coming back in 1999 and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I forget the name, the author, but I think I read that, way back in the day. And yeah, like
You
it's kind of
probably
like,
got some stuck in there too.
oh boy, if only they went public. But yeah, that was just weird. I was on a dare. I was asked to read the first Left Behind book. By one of my friends who's a manager at the old border store, the bookstore. So he said, you need to read this book. And I said, I don't want to read this book. I said, you're making money. You bought a new truck off the proceeds from a video game based around this. You need to read this book. So he he coerced me into reading the book. It was not a pleasant experience.
Did you watch the movie?
I no, I got it. I got as far into it as I think I could go. All I can say is that this book was not meant for me. Um,
Yeah.
so
I think I watched part one was okay because I was like excited about it. I didn't know any better. Then I
sure,
think part two or part three was like just terrible. Like it was just
you
and
got
that's not to
figured.
say that part
Yeah.
yeah. That's not to say that part one was like amazing either, but yeah, it was bad.
To be fair, I was told I had to read Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code too, which I also protested at, and I hated that one
Yeah.
too. Um, you know, Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code is just so unbelievably stupid. I'm just totally feeling sorry for Christians who have to put up with this crap. It's like, come on, man.
I know that is the
This,
one. Yeah, because I've seen the movie and I was like, why do y'all believe this? Like y'all really, but there's people that really believe it, and they take the
yeah,
ideas and they say, see, Jesus has
it's
a, he had a wife and he has kids and all this other stuff, and I'm like, man. But yeah,
it's
that's
totally
the equivalent.
it misses the total point of the story, right? It
Yeah,
totally misses the point of the story. Even if he had a wife and kids, that would totally miss the point of the story. He's not going to be producing godchildren. That's not what that thing is supposed to be about, right? It's supposed to be
yeah,
about that you've lived that human life, so you have that sense of comparison, and then the mystery happens after he dies, and it's a cool story.
yeah,
It absolutely is a cool story. So, all right. I'm intrigued because you've indicated that you do think that it's a reference to modern Israel. So that does put a potential clock on it. You have indicated that you don't necessarily believe that the United States is front and center. I read Revelations, I don't see the United States or anything like it anywhere near it. So
Yeah,
I can heartily agree. The US is not front and center in that story. Israel clearly is front and center. The question is which one. And since there's been a
which
lot
one?
of Israel's, it's going to be it's an interesting point because that would suspect that you are looking for signs that might indicate a conclusion, the concluding of affairs. Do you have anything like a time frame, or is it just you're curious because of the things that you read?
Yeah, no, I don't have a time frame because I don't believe that we should be looking at a time frame
Totally
because
fair.
the same reason, just the same reason that why he told them the 1,000 year type of thing, because it's like,
Yep.
oh, I have to wait in let's say 2050, because I think in 2050 is supposed to be the time where all the world will have the Bible in their language. At least let's say that's a time frame. Let's say that's the clock.
Sure.
Um, and again, that would be like the beginning, but then there's still time where they have to read it and reach other people. But anyways, um, but so I don't think that we because if like let's say if it was 2050 and God told us, hey, 2050, all of us would be chilling until that time. We're like, oh man, now I need to get to work, right? Dad's coming home. Now I
Hmm.
need to get to work because I've been relaxing this whole time. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah, I get
think
you.
that's part of the yeah, so I think that's part of the reason why he says no man knows the hour, because if he told us, then we would just not be doing anything. We would just be slacking off like we already are right now, even though we don't know when he's coming back. At least that's what I think. But
Okay.
I know you have further questions on that.
Well, I have
Yeah.
lots of. I mean, but we could go on about this. I mean, if it interests other people who follow your channel, maybe we can go into this in more detail. But why I was curious about it is because I've seen it come up a lot, and it does seem that it is kind of a timely notion. I mean, the after the October 7th attack, for the first time in my life, I have seen Orthodox Jews talk about this.
Hmm.
And they, at least some of them are rather famous rabbis, are looking for a Messiah to show up. They're obviously not looking for Jesus to show up.
Wow.
They're looking for a Messiah. And it's interesting to me because, I mean, the October 7th attack radically changed Israeli politics. Um,
Wow.
But it's interesting because I've never heard this from Jews. Even Orthodox Jews say, if you would have talked about this in the 1980s when Hal Lindsey is on the bestseller list all the time, they would just be shaking their heads, going, "Who knows what the hell the Christians are talking about?" But after the October 7th attack, this has become at least something that's discussed, and you'll actually kind of see a kind of a narrow Jewish commentary on it, which is interesting to me because I've never seen that in my lifetime. Do I agree with
Wow.
them? No. No, I don't agree with them at
No.
any level, but it is very,
Yeah.
very interesting. So it's kind of something that, now I'm going to kind of look at because I'm sort of curious what their take is. The the
What
Jewish prophet,
what do you
sorry, not
think about the new temple to be built and the red heifer and all that? Because I feel like
oh,
a lot of people, I haven't followed it as much, but a lot of people that I
yeah,
know, they take that to help with the timeline, right? Like they're using that like when the temple was built in Jerusalem, and this red heifer, they were waiting for it to
yeah.
be born because it has to be without spot and blemish, and they found one, so now the timeline is moving faster for them.
Yeah,
But
this is I what do I think about it? I think it's a con offered by the Temple Institute as a way of bilking credulous Texan ranchers out of money. Beyond that,
yeah,
I
the
think
Texans, yeah.
the Temple Institute is run by some people who think this is be an interesting, provocative act to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque in the hopes that they
Mm,
themselves can um, add that to a certain messianic expectation. And that the destruction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque is going to be the big signal for them that we can now go build a new temple. The reality is that you'd have to build a temple on a mount, which we don't know exactly where it's supposed to go because we really don't know, on a temple mount in Israel, which is a more secular country than the US.
Wow.
And if you poll Israelis over what they think of this, generally speaking, they think it's weird, flat earth Christians who are bringing this up as an issue. That could change if it becomes mainstream. If they were to build a temple, I, I would hate it. I don't know why I care one way or the other about where a temple would go. I would be a majority of Jews polled would probably think it was a mistake because it's supposed to
Mm.
be, there's no tradition when you get a temple, right? Our first temple that we're talking about is the Temple of Solomon, but we have lots of archaeological evidence to suggest there are multiple temples, even at the same time when Solomon was supposedly building one temple. That temple is destroyed by the Babylonians. Who builds the next temple? Well, I mean, we have Ezra. Ezra can kind of tell us that the returning Babylonian exiles start building it at the end of the 6th century. But what's it really like? If you ask like Herodotus describes the Near East in some weird ass detail, but he never mentions Judea. He's never heard of it before. Uh,
Mm.
globally informed Greeks in the 5th and the 4th century have no idea where Judea is. They've never heard of the place. They have heard of it by the 3rd century, and by the 1st century, one of the probably the largest building in the world is in Jerusalem. It was built by Herod the Great.
Oh, okay.
Because
Yeah.
Herod the Great mastered tourism, right? How do you get, because more people, more Jews live outside of Judea than live in it at this point. And that's been true for centuries. Herod can get has a massive incentive to both because he's not really a very securely good Jew by any means. This is a way of basically
Yeah.
giving back to the Jewish community by building this gigantic temple that everybody will know about and the whole world will come and visit. And they did. And then it was destroyed in 70. The last time, there's been multiple attempts to rebuild the temple. Simon Bar Kokhba tried in the 130s, and he was eventually convinced otherwise by being murdered by the Romans. It seemed like a Jewish thing to
Yep.
do at the time, unfortunately. There are various other efforts to do the same thing. The Roman Emperor Antoninus Pius, maybe about a decade after the Simon Bar Kokhba, makes kind of an agreement that maybe we can rebuild the temple later to the surviving most influential rabbi of the time. Never happens. Um, Julian the Apostate, probably never heard of that guy. In the 360s, he stops being a Christian Roman empire and re-embraces his pagan roots. And he figures the easiest way he can piss off the Christians is rebuild the Jewish temple. And had he not been like fatally wounded, I think at the siege of Antioch, maybe he would have. And then we get all these other efforts. We have the Persians are going to help us build the temple, right? Never happens. Do I want them to? I don't know. Can I imagine? I've lived in it. I've lived in Jerusalem. I can't imagine going to Jerusalem and sacrificing a dove. I mean, maybe you'd want to do it
Yeah, that's
once
true.
if you were around. I mean, it's a weird thing to do at this point because the temple has been gone so long. There's this
Yeah.
expectation that God will come back and fix the world if we do this, and I just don't buy it. As to
Mm.
what Jews will or will not think, I don't know. Ask me in 10 years. If we have something where something like that occurs and people want to do that, it'll probably result in a civil war in Israel itself.
Mm.
Probably. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, people have been talking about doing this for a very long time and never been able to actually generate it. So you could answer, you could say, well, it wasn't the right time. We'll get to the right time maybe by 2050. When that final Bible drops in some remote
Right.
South American Indian language, we finally, cross that bridge, then, maybe the Jews will lose all sense of preservation and build a temple again. But if you
Yeah.
look at the history of Jerusalem and you ask how many times, you add up the amount of time when there was a temple versus there wasn't a temple, vast majority of Jerusalem's history has no temple.
Mm.
And I don't necessarily think that the times when it did have a temple were really all that great. So I'm not a fan. But God moves pieces in mysterious ways. Who knows?
Yeah.
Does that work? So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that works. I was just just curious to know what, I guess, what was the understanding of a Jewish person? Is that something that they're looking for, or is it just Christians, right? Like, as Christians, they're looking for it, but they're
Before
looking
October
for it
7th, I would say it
because,
was only Christians who were looking for
mm,
this. After October 7th, it's
yeah,
not necessarily true. Their expectations will be very different than yours, though. Then
yeah,
the
no,
Jewish
and that was
expectations
my
will be
point.
very different from yours. They will be looking for Hezekiah reborn. They'll be looking for the second David. They'll be looking for a
Yeah.
figure who, um, but here's the thing: the figure before he's recognized, he has to do all the things he's supposed to do. He has to bring world peace, which,
Yeah.
sounds busy, but that's why I'm not really. I don't know.
Yeah. So that's what's interesting because as you're talking about it, even as you're talking about it right now, right? Like this,
Mhm.
so one, the person that brings world peace to Christians will be an Antichrist, at least from what I understood, right? So that kind of
Possibly, yeah,
fits with that understanding, right? Like the temple
sure.
built, this person comes, world peace. Okay, cool. We got the, Antichrist. But then also I was thinking about it because,
And the Muslims have their
Jesus
own
came as a
version.
lamb.
Yeah.
Huh?
And the Muslims have their own version. So
Yes.
we can argue
Yeah,
about
but
it. Right.
right. Yeah. And
Mhm.
then I was just thinking because when Jesus does come back, he is going to be the lion, not the lamb, right? Like he's
Right.
not going to be
Right.
he's going to come and take, which is what
He's
the
going to come into his
Messiah Jews
kingdom
are
and
waiting for.
he's going to transform the world because, he'll introduce what in Hebrew we refer to as the Olam Haba, the world to come.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Um how much time do you have left if we
it is
want
about
to get a
5:09.
few
I
more
probably
in?
need to go check in on my mom. So we've done about an hour and without an interruption, which is great. If you got one
Yeah.
more question, go ahead and ask that, but we
Okay.
should keep this one short.
Okay, okay. Let's see. This is
I'm going to turn a light on here because I'm just looking dark and
yeah.
mysterious at this point.
I think you like that.
Yeah, sure. Uh,
Let's see. This is an old question, and so I don't know if it even holds as much weight because we had this
okay,
conversation a long time ago. But
sure.
um,
In August.
the question was something along the lines of again, this is a Brady question. Why he had a big issue with God using us as messengers, right? Like God must be so in a sense dumb, not dumb, but um not caring to use us as his messengers. Why would he use human beings to get such an important message when we mess it up so badly? But again, um, it was more of a question that he was asking, and I think me and you went back and forth on it. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't remember the reasons, but yeah. And if not, we'll just kind of jump to whatever you have left.
Real quickly on that one, I'm a I'm a bad person to ask about this, about what I think. I can summarize a more
Or
religious
more so,
Jewish
what
point
what
of
was your
view.
issue with what was more so what was your issue with God using us? Because I know why I believe God used us, but I think you had an issue. He had an issue, but then I think you also had an issue with
I
God
did.
using human beings.
I don't think my issue is the same as Brady's. But they may be
Yeah, they're
related. I don't know. I've had this discussion off and on near him, and he seems to at least like my points, but I don't think they're the same. Um, my fundamental problem with Revelation is why? What we have are books. Books are written by people. All books are contingent. I don't know if I'm going to offend any Muslims out there, but the Quran was not written by God. It was written by men. So is the
yeah, for
Torah,
sure.
so is the Hebrew Bible, so are all the various Gospels. They had all the faults and all the inspiration that comes from people writing things down. Men wrote things down. The problem here is that in the context of the Hebrew Bible, this is a message from one people to one people. And it's kind of one and done. God gets angry if you don't follow his laws. He may send the Babylonians or the Assyrians to chastise you. And if you get chastised enough, you probably die. And that's it, right? You missed your chance to be able to do it the right way. So the prophets come up with notions of national resurrection, but they're not worried about your resurrection because you're dead. You're gone.
Hmm.
In the Hellenistic period, or maybe the earlier in the Persian period, hell and heaven get added in a coherent way to the text. Now, God will kill you and then pursue you into the afterlife and maybe burn you a little bit because you didn't believe in the right thing. And this starts getting into a whole new zone that the Hebrew Bible doesn't address. But because beliefs have changed, now it does. Now this just makes revelation worse because the revelation in Christianity and in Islam is global. The message is
Yep.
global. You're everybody who is a son of Adam, a daughter of Eve, or however you want to construct it, is this applies to. They all need to know about this because the fate of their immortal soul, which now are immortal because thank you Greeks, now immortality is weighed in the balance. You have to get this question right. But this is an unbearable tension in the whole story because if you go back 2,000 years ago, nobody knows this message. If you go back 3,000 years ago, nobody knows this message. Never mind if we want to, I mean, we can have debates over how long you think people have been around, but it doesn't matter. There's a whole class of humanity which is either inconveniently timed in space or time to ever get this message. So we don't know how it applies to them. And then you get to this issue where 2,000 years ago, now somebody can answer, right? But it takes a really, really long time for it to go from a handful of people to anything like even a reasonable fraction of the human population have any chance to even heard the message. So almost everybody who lives between then and now has no idea what the message is. So you can have missionaries translate the Bible into Hishkarana or whatever obscure language that it hasn't been translated into yet, but it's not going to help their ancestors. It's not going to help. It's not even going to
Hmm.
help them until it happens. Right? The people who live on North Sentinel Island have no idea what any of this message is about, and nor do any of their ancestors. So however long these, you know what I mean. North Sentinel Island is it's an island. It's north of Nicobar Islands. It's a protected zone. There was a missionary who went there and got killed some years ago because the locals, locals don't like outsiders in a big way, and
Yeah.
the Indian government theoretically protects the territory to keep outsiders. But it's one of the few places where you can still you can still sort of be in the Neolithic. Point is that these people these people don't know what's going on. So most people who exist don't appear to know that this is an important message to get because the revelation never reaches them. And then that ignores the fact that even the people where the revelation does reach, they may go, huh, no, that doesn't work for me. And you could say, well, it's because you want to sin, but it's not what the lived experience is like. Instead, you look at it and go, just don't believe it. I mean, if there's anybody who's going to hell because he doesn't believe that Jesus is the Messiah, that would be me. Because, I mean, I have read about this a lot, and I'm not convinced. And I know the reasons as to why I'm not convinced. So I deeply suspect Revelation itself is broken because I've never been given anything like evidence that I found convincing. And I know people will say, well, you really did have a good chance. I don't know. Thanks. Telepathy is great, I guess. But no, I really don't feel like I've had a great chance. I've never been Christian. And unlike the vast majority of human beings I've ever met, I've spent some time studying it. And I'll give you
Yeah.
a fact which I've never told Brady, and you'll find amusing. There was a brief time, I was about 12, when I did pray to Jesus to show himself to me. Please come enter my heart. What the hell? I've got nothing else to do. It's Thursday. I say it dismissively like that, but the point is that I was at a point where I was young enough to at least give it a try. And no bells, no fireworks, nothing. What could I say?
Mm.
And I've encountered the material a lot subsequent to that, and I am not moved. So I don't like if we're dependent on other people to deliver a message that's coming from God and which the fate of your mortal soul will depend on it. I would just ask God to be better at sending his message. And that is one of my fundamental problems with it. So using human beings as messengers doesn't really bothers Brady, but it doesn't really bother me. I get that. Yeah, you're going to use whatever. But I just don't think the message has anything. I don't think the message has been sent thoroughly. So, I mean,
Yeah.
whether he uses humans or he doesn't use humans, I mean, we're still filled with doubt.
Hmm.
Sorry,
Yeah, no, that was
that may
definitely
have come
different.
across a little bit harsh, but that was not my intention. My intention
No,
was
I
to
mean
sort
it.
of answer the question.
Yeah, yeah, no, it wasn't harsh at all. It is I would say eye-opening. Even right now I'm reading a book and it was just talking about I think 64% of Christians are leaving every year. And just all these stats, which is
Sure,
it's eye-opening and it's important to realize
sure.
just like everything that we're talking about, right? Like
Hmm.
um most, I think 80% of Christians in the US have never evangelized, never shared their faith, right? Like at all,
Sure.
which is crazy. So,
Yeah.
it's for us, like we really are not doing our job. We're not doing, if we believe this, right? I think
Mm.
Penn and Teller, whatever, I forget which one is the tall one, but he said, if you believe this and you're not sharing what you believe and you think they're really going to hell, then you must hate them, right?
Right,
Like, how much do
right,
you hate them?
right.
So yeah, no, it's yeah, that I do remember. Yeah, that was definitely different reasoning for what you shared because yours is more just like I don't care who got used, just say something, right? Like
Right.
just
For
show
me,
me
the big
something,
problem is
not
called
just
the problem. It's called the problem from hiddenness, and the hiddenness is can be.
hiddenness of God.
Yeah, I don't. I grew up in a religious tradition, where the hiddenness isn't that surprising, right? And especially in more Reformed Judaism, sources. But in Christianity, the hiddenness it's weird, right? It's weird that that would be unless you're willing to abandon a lot of other notions of Christian theology, like well, there really is hell, or you get an extra chance. You're like the Mormons. You can go to school in the afterlife, or I mean, whatever. I mean, I tried to read the Book of Mormon. I'm with Mark Twain.
Catholics,
It's
purgatory.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the celestial kingdom and stuff like that. I agree with Mark Twain. The Book of Mormon is chloroform in book form. You ever heard that quote? It's from Roughing It.
No.
This is it's like if you need to get to sleep, you've got the Book of Mormon. It's very handy. But yeah, the hiddenness is surprising to me if that is important. And this comes back to why I was a deist so long, is that I don't necessarily have a problem with God. But if God's popping quizzes for you after you die, then there's a lot of questions that I have to that God. Because it does seem like God has created a vast and diverse world, which the Bible doesn't cover. And I have questions. I mean, it's older, it's weirder, it's got more stuff in it. There's people who don't fit in the narrative. Where do they fit in? I have a lot of questions. And I so far I've not had any sorts of answers that are satisfying to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, those are good
all right,
good thoughts, good challenges. Yeah, I think this is a good point to stop too. But
cool,
yeah, I appreciate you sharing those thoughts because it's important for us Christians, especially hopefully the ones that do watch my channel, for us to hear and listen and consider. Like these are some things we need to wrestle with. We need to think about and not just kind of brush them off, right?
sure. All right, man. Well, it's been great
Yes.
talking again. And hopefully well, I'll obviously see you around the water cooler at various points. And yeah, hopefully if this is of interest to you, we can do something like it again.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely will. We'll be back and forth to see what new questions we can come up with, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for sure.
All right, man. You have a good rest of your Sunday.
Alrighty, you too,
All
everyone.
right.
Peace.
Shalom.
Shalom.